Westworld Episode 4, Dissonance Theory. Now, this episode continues the trend, specifically with Maeve, I would say, with the host continuing to, I guess degrade isn't the right term, but I guess it's more advanced, upgrade, really. And it's getting dangerously close for Maeve, especially by the end of the episode, with her realizing something's off and that certain elements and certain things don't really make much of a difference. And so we go through this episode and she's having these visions and stuff and she's remembering certain things. It's more linear with her character, but she's somewhat jumping through time. Like in that opening sequence, she was kind of jumping through time. Like she's talking with Clementine, I believe is her name. And so they're talking and she's like, you got something on your face. And so it's blood because they end up getting shot, like the random, players or visitors, I guess, to the park. In the background, they start going wild. They start shooting everyone. So they both get shot. Maeve gets shot in the stomach, but she doesn't, reset. She doesn't lose her memories like she should. She dies, with her eyes open. And so it's the programming of, oh, you're dead. But that other part of her programming was still a little bit active to where she remembers. Because, of course, they could get shot and it won't really make a difference. Maybe if they were shot in the head, eventually they could get destroyed because they have, the way the guns work. They do actually, get shot. So at some point, they could probably get shot up enough to where, the parts of their body, blow off. Because I'm still trying to figure out how the guns work. If it's, sensor-based or what the deal is. Because we have, characters we've seen humans get shot. So we have the man in black who was, shot up and is like, oh, whatever, no big deal. He gets shot in the back, nothing happens. And then we've had characters like Billy who was he was shot in the shoulder and he fell down because he wasn't used to it. It's like, no, you get shot and it hurts, or it can, but you can't die from it. But they do physically shoot you. That could, based on what we saw with Billy, he could get shot straight in the eye, something like that. That would take his eye out. Of course, they're hosts, so they aim all the chest and stomach. So it's a little different than what we might expect. But she gets shot, and she continues to retain these memories, which we see eventually. By the time she decides to go and write, it wasn't just one day. That just happened to be the perfect thing where she remembered, and she remembered being shot, and they kind of have it in the dialogue, and it seems like nothing at first. It's like, oh, I still got a little bit of shrapnel. It's like, whatever, just patch her up and send her out. They want her back out there. So they rush it and they just leave the bullet inside of her. So as the episode continues on and she's having these visions and, these memories really, and she's trying to figure out what the heck are these things. So she has the drawing and she tries to hide it. And she finds all these drawings. I think it was 5 or 6 other drawings. So this has been the 7th or, 6th or 7th cycle, maybe even the 8th. I think there were quite a few in there. And she's going through, so she's done this multiple times where she's had these, small little memories here and there. But now she's starting to spread things, and, Hector Escatana comes back into play because of the Man in Black, because of course he's looking for the maze, which is also introduced to Dolores in this episode, but I'll get to that later. And so he finds the snake at the end of the Blood Aurora, or whatever it is. And it turns out to be the woman from the first episode who's with Hector Escatana. So they, team up together and it's like, alright, we'll join your crew. And they go in and save Hector Escatana. I don't know what the deal is, if I'm being totally honest. Not 100% sure what the deal is with the Man in Black wanting to save Lawrence. Maybe it's because he just really likes him from back when he was younger or whatever. Oh, I spent so much time with you, I don't want you to die. Although they just come in and reset it anyway. But I guess he'd have to kind of start all over. It's like he'd have to go and go back to the thing and kill off all the sheriff dudes and all that crap, and then deal with all those random issues. So he goes through, saves him. Or, he's talking to him what if I'm here to save you and stuff. Has them both, get fake arrested and stuff. Has them sent off to the firing squad and everything. He has this one match with exploding cigars. Escapes with Hector. They both kill off the firing squad, save Lawrence again. And then they take off and it's like, what is his deal? He really likes him. And also, he didn't really need to have him there, but I guess it was just easier to have them. That was part of the plan, was to have them focused on him so they could do their thing inside the jail, because they only had to shoot like one person in the jail, or maybe shoot two people. I don't think they even had to shoot anybody, actually. I think the one guy had the cigar, so he died. And then I don't think they shot anyone else until they got outside to the firing squad. So it just worked. That was a good plan. Worked out. They roll back into the little camp, and the Man in Black gets the info. Like, all right, this is what happened. And I thought it was interesting because when she first showed up, I was like, okay, that's definitely the woman from the premiere. But I don't remember her having this tattoo. And so then it made sense because she tells the story of why she has the snake, and he mentions like, oh, there's one last spot you need to have colored in, the head of the snake. And she's like, what's his name? And it ends up being Wyatt, who of course is the enemy of Teddy, and that explains the scene where they team up with each other in like the little war section. So I thought that was cool. So of course they go along trying to get to Wyatt, and it's like, oh, well, how about that? Here's Teddy. So he cuts him down. They're going to be together, and I'm assuming they'll be working together, at least somewhat, because it seems like, based on the promo, Teddy and the Man in Black don't get along too much. I don't know if he's supposed to be this great rival, because they have the scene where the Man in Black is talking to Ford. At least that's the way it's cut together. I'm pretty sure they were sitting in front of each other. And so he has like the knife, and then I don't know if he was trying to stab Teddy, because the way it was cut, it just seemed like he was just holding it, and Teddy just grabbed it and slammed it into the table. Like, I don't want you to have the knife out, basically. Just so I know it's safe, I'll just stab it into the table. But I don't know, there's suddenly some rival for him to, get to the maze. Maybe it's Dolores that they're talking about. I don't, maybe he doesn't know who it is just yet, but he knows someone is trying to stop him from reaching the maze. And it's interesting. And Ford's there talking with him and stuff. Also, the Man in Black references Arnold, so he knows who he is. He knows who Arnold is, and he says, you could consider me as, like, continuing on his legacy or something like that, like his successor or something. He says something specific that I can't think of right now, but he, the Man in Black, has his own little foundation, which apparently saved this one dude's sister's life, although the Man in Black was pissed off and was like, yeah, I'll cut your tongue out if you say anything else. This is my vacation. He was a dick to him. So this dude is super rich, and they mention it somewhere in this. Do they actually say it? They might not say it. There's a theory that I think of, but I'll save that for the end, because just in case it's like a spoiler that you guys might not want to hear, I'll save that stuff for the end. It involves the Man in Black and who he really is. But he does mention Arnold, so he talks about him, and he's trying to find the maze, and it's supposed to set people free. We have Dolores, who is not going to be looking for the maze. She doesn't actually go looking in this episode. She's still off, excuse me, with Billy and Logan, or William, because he doesn't actually like being called Billy, which I thought was interesting. Because he got really mad about that, and so he prefers to be called William. So she's still off with them. They're going on this bounty, and it turns out that Westworld actually has Easter eggs. So Logan is, they're with the sheriff and everything, and the dude's like, I'm with whoever this person is. So he kills the sheriff, and he's like, your dumb quest just led us into an Easter egg. So, we're doing this now. Like, we're gonna go evil for a little bit, because this is like a secret little thing inside of the game. So I thought that was cool. So that's what they're doing now. They're going kind of evil, and they have to kind of hold each other's people hostage, because of course William still cares. He wants to be the good guy, and he still cares, even though they're all fake, they're all robots. He still cares, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? So he puts the gun to the first dude, as Logan puts the gun to Dolores. So it's like, all right, so now they're headed to this random place to find this villain, who's an Easter egg, inside of Westworld, and we'll see how all that stuff plays out. But at some point, Dolores is going to be looking for the maze. I don't understand what Bernard is doing. I don't know if he... I don't know. He wants to find the maze. I would assume this whole being free thing is like the ultimate unlock switch to their programming. Like, hey, go here, find the center of the maze, poof. You're 100% AI. Or maybe they wipe your memory and you just flat out think you're real. I truly don't know. Who knows what the heck it really means, like, to be free? Do they get to go out to the world, or is the maze fake? Is the maze not actually a game and it's a secret way out? Like, I highly doubt that, because it's in the programming of the character, so I highly doubt that it's that. But it could also be Arnold, because he's the one looking for the maze. And there's some theories out there about Bernard that he might be a creation of Arnold as well, which may or may not make sense based on this maze thing. If this is meant to, I don't know, set people free, maybe it's, there's theories going out there that maybe Arnold made a creature for himself inside of the park, or like a consciousness that he's locked away. And that was one of my theories, like maybe his consciousness was finally able to get into the coding. Since there were those little reveries, it was a little glitch in the system, so there was enough space just for that little bit of code he included like 30 years back, and he threw it in there. So I don't know. There's a lot of theories running around. We also have Ford in this episode, who was pretty hardcore, I'd say, because Bernard, he's talking with this girlfriend or acquaintance, and I of course can't think of her name, but she's the representative of the board. And so she goes and talks to him, and it's like, I came here when I was a kid. It was probably this table or, that one or whatever. And they're going through, and she's like, hey, this is, they're kind of just talking it up, and she's trying not to be too aggressive with him. Not too much. And then he kind of, he turns it on her, and he becomes super aggressive. But in an Anthony Hopkins sort of way. Hannibal-like way, actually. And it's very calm, and he's like, we know our guests. We know everyone who's worked here. He talks about Arnold a little, where he's like, he never wanted the You Money Men in here. And I was like, no, we'll make it work. We know our guests. We know our employees as well. And so she has the realization, like, this is the restaurant that I was at. Like, this is the table, and this is the chair that I sat in. And I kind of love this scene, because he's like, well, we know our guests as well as our employees. And he's like, be careful with Bernard. And then he's like, I know that, he's like, there's already been a representative sent, which surprised her. And he's like, the board knows that they'll have their new narrative on time, and it won't be a retrospective. And then this giant machine starts coming in, which, honestly, at first, it just looks like buildings are, like, popping out of the ground. And I'm like, well, that seems new, because they were digging this whole time, so that seems a little weird. And so he's like, it's just, like, popping out of the ground and stuff. And, he's like, it won't be a retrospective. And this thing is coming towards them, basically, and it's like, I'm not the sentimental type. And he just, like, destroys this whole part, which was clearly meant to represent, like, oh, this is something that's a part of your life that I created, basically. I don't care. And I'm going to wipe it out to make whatever I want and make something new, because this is me. This is what I own here. I am this park. So I was like, that was actually a pretty cool move on his part, where he's just like, alright, you want to, try to come at me. I'm going to really show you how it's done. Have this little dinner. I'm going to freeze everybody. He does his little finger motions and stuff. And it was just pretty cool. So I certainly enjoyed that scene. It was very tense and really weird and stuff, what he was doing. And just the way he played it all out. Very nice, very well done. And, of course, I'm excited. Things are getting crazier and crazier. It seems like, based on this episode, Maeve has officially affected Hector Escaton, because he's in the promo for the next episode as well, and he says something like, he's like, help me to somebody. So I don't know if he's going to start remembering as well, but we also find out that the one host that, like, bashed its own head in, he didn't carve Orion on the rock. It's just a random symbol, because it doesn't have the 3 stars for Orion's belt, which I actually knew that, and I just never thought to look at it. I was like, they said it was Orion. I was like, alright, whatever. I didn't think to actually, I wasn't even paying attention to it. I'm like, alright, that dude knows Orion. So I just let it go. I didn't actually look to see if it had, Orion's belt on it. So we find out that that's not actually Orion. So now it's just some other, either it is like a map of, some star system or whatever, or it's just a weird symbol. Maybe it's a piece of the puzzle. It's a part of something that's meant to be a whole image or something like that. You connect the dots. But I really don't know. I'm excited to see where they take that. Excuse me. Ugh. So tired. I was up super late watching all these shows. But it was cool. It was like, alright, so now it's not Orion. It's some other star system, or it's just some weird design that someone threw in there. Something random came up. Maybe some Arnold stuff, maybe not some Arnold stuff. But it was a fun episode, and at this point, I want to get into a recent theory that I found out, and I did a whole video on this, which you guys can check out if you want to, because I won't go too far into it. But for those of you who may not want to hear about this, because it could be a correct theory, so it would technically be telling you, the future of the series. If you don't want it, just in case, I do personally think that it's actually a really great theory based on like one single bit of evidence that seems way too obvious. It's not really a hint. It's just like, nope, that's clearly something different. So if you don't want to know this theory, then as I normally do in my videos, just want to know what you guys thought about this episode, your favorite parts, least favorite parts about it. Whoops. And I definitely want to know where you guys think the Maeve's story is headed. Like, how far are things going to go, and how soon? I think we know how far they're going to go, but how soon are they going to get there? Is it going to? I don't think it'll be the next episode, because I think now they're going to focus on Katana and stuff. But want to know your theories on that. So you can just cut things off here, because I don't want to spoil it for you if this theory happens to be right. But the theory that I recently heard is that the Man in Black is actually William in the present. Billy, or William, is the Man in Black when he first goes to the park, and that's 30 years in the past. And the way that they edit the episodes makes it seem like they're all still together, but they're not. None of the characters show up with Logan and William. When they're in Sweetwater, you don't see Maeve or Clementine or anything like that. Or you see Clementine, but there's references to dialogue where it's like, oh, she's been like the hostess before. So maybe that was before Maeve was even created, or when Maeve was doing the other storyline. Little stuff that's in the world and things like that. But the biggest thing is that in William's first episode, which is episode 2, the logo for Westworld is different than the one that we see during other scenes. So people believe that the Man in Black is William just 30 years later. And I think that might work. And my biggest thing is that I think the reason William is able to do whatever he wants, and the Man in Black is able to, is because he has a stake in the company, which they reference in this episode, where it's like, they should really increase our stake in the company. Logan mentions that, and it's like, I thought this was a part of welcoming me to the family, but they have that stake in the company. And who knows, it could be William. It could actually end up being Logan himself who's the Man in Black. He stays as the bad guy, and he just gets worse. He becomes an actual villain or something like that inside this world. But a lot of people think it might be Billy, and he starts off as a good guy, and then he becomes really bad after what I assume is that major malfunction they talk about 30 years in the past, where I would guess that his brother-in-law was killed, and so he's given free reign of the park basically for the rest of his life. So it's not just the fact that he has a stake in the company, but that's a part of it. And that also might explain why they only pay $40,000 a day, because they already have a stake in the company. Because I mentioned, like, that's, even though it's a ton of money, that seemed way cheaper than what I was expecting for this literally entire world sort of deal. Excuse me. But there's some interesting stuff in this episode, because I thought for sure there's some scenes where they have William, Logan, Dolores, and Lawrence all together when they're doing the stagecoach thing. So there's some scenes with them together, and that I think will be the official tell as to whether or not it's in the future, or whether or not they're in the same timeline, or if they're in the past. Because the stuff with Dolores, she's clearly jumping through time, and we don't know what the heck the deal is with Bernard and his conversations with her. We have no idea when that stuff happens, but he's the voice we always hear when something bad is happening with Dolores. When when it was like, shoot him or kill this person, it's always Bernard's voice. So I don't know exactly what the deal is with that, which is why I think some people believe that Arnold made Bernard in the past or something like that, and he's supposed to be the consciousness of him in the current timeline, or just a host that was made to kind of eventually mess with things. I don't, who knows. But I thought the theory, there were some things that happened in this episode that kind of made the theory work. Like I said, them having a stake in the company and why the Man in Black is able to do whatever he wants. Mostly, the normal thing where the characters don't show up and they aren't in the same timeline. And I feel like we're getting closer to whatever this big incident was. I think it's going to have to do with the fact that Logan switched guns in this episode, because they go through the house and he's just shooting up everybody, of course. And he gets to the last dude and he runs out of bullets and he's like, oh, and he beats him with the gun to knock him out. And he's like, oh, it's cool. So he likes his gun better and he's like, upgrade. And he throws his gun down. Now, I would assume all the guns are the same, and it doesn't make much of a difference if you stole a gun from a host and then you shot another host. It would still have the same effect. But at the same time, the malfunctions might come from the guns themselves and not necessarily the hosts, where something can go wrong and it actually shoots. Because in the past, and that might explain why in the present, the Man in Black, when he gets shot up in the first episode, it's just like, and it's like little smoke pellets hitting his chest and nothing happens. But in the past, when he was younger, before they, really built up the park for safety, he gets shot and actually gets knocked down. That junk could take your eye out, and like I mentioned, like, you could literally get hurt if, even though they aim at different places and stuff, if someone else aimed at you and, like, shot you in the head or whatever, you could actually die. So there's a lot of stuff going on there where it's like somehow someone died, and I don't know if it's going to come from the guns being switched out, if that really has anything to do with it. Possibly, in the past, maybe like that person, because he knocked that guy out, he didn't kill him. And so it's possible that that guy could come back, and that, maybe host guns, when they select them, are more powerful than, or, player, visitor weapons are way more powerful than the host weapons. So they'll be in this shootout, and Logan will be doing this thing where he's like, oh, I'm just going to run out and shoot everybody. And he's like, hey, that's the guy knocked out. I'm going to go finish him off. And that guy's going to pull out his gun on him, and he might shoot him and kill him because it'll have more power. Because they shoot through stuff, and it's hard to tell what technology they can and can't have, because it's like, well, I was thinking, because my girlfriend and I were talking about it during the episode, it's like, well, I always assumed that all the guns were like sensors, where it's like, they hit the host but nothing happens, but when they hit, actual people, or when they hit the host they die, but when they hit actual people nothing happens, because the hosts have like sensors in their bodies that are like, basically squibs in a movie. You pull a trigger towards a certain area and it just explodes. It triggers the robot to be like, oh, this part was hit, explode. But they can also like shoot through stuff. They can shoot glass bottles, so they're actual bullets that do shoot out. So, we were going through that, I'm like, well, like I mentioned my sensor idea, and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, because they shoot holes in walls all the time, and they've shot in glass, they shoot glass bottles, and even with the Man in Black, if this timeline thing is correct, they can still shoot bottles and break them in the present. So maybe in the past they're way more powerful, and so the host guns were weaker, but the player guns were really, really strong, comparatively speaking. So when Logan finds this dude again, he gets killed with his own gun because he gets shot like in the head or something, right? He like trips while being shot at, and it just hits him somewhere important, and it kills him. So who knows? But that's the theory that's been really big,